shortage of legal news happening in Chicago and around the country. Here to help us sort it all out in a segment we like to call Windy City Law is our legal expert, a managing partner at GWC Injury Attorneys, one of Chicago's premier personal injury law firms, Louis Cairo. Hi, Lou.
How you doing?
I'm so glad to have you here.
I'm glad to be here.
We ain't kidding. There's a lot to talk about, right?
It absolutely is.
Let's get to our first case. Johnson & Johnson is facing more than 13,000 lawsuits linking its baby and talcum powders to ovarian cancer and other illnesses. More than 24 trials have been scheduled in the U.S. Johnson & Johnson is denying any wrongdoing. Lou, catch us up with what's going on with this case.
You know, and I don't know if it's something you're familiar with or your viewers are familiar with, but you know, since we were kids, I'm 6 years old. I remember when I was this big, right? My mother always had Johnson & Johnson baby powder. It was when the babies, putting it on the babies when they're infants, right? And mothers and fathers using it for hygiene purposes.
Sure.
And it's amazing to find out now, years later, that there is scientific evidence that these firms have discovered to link the talc in this talcum powder to two of the worst cancers, ovarian cancer in women and mesothelioma, which is a really deadly lung cancer. And the thought that it's a health product that we're finding out years later is now taking people's lives is a very scary thing. Now, Johnson & Johnson, of course, they've had some trials. They have universally denied, like you get rear-ended, they deny, right? And that's just very typical. But they've denied, and they've won some trials. Some trials, the jurors have not been able to come up with a conclusion, maybe yes, maybe no. They just didn't have a unanimous decision. Yeah. And there have been 3 or 4 trials that the Johnson & Johnson lost, where the jury has concluded, based upon the evidence, based upon the law that they were instructed, based upon all the science, that it's really provable that these people have suffered mesothelioma or ovarian cancer from this product. There was a $4 billion verdict against Johnson & Johnson.
Really?
Yes, that got appealed, and in December of last year, just like 5 months ago, they lost the appeal. And this is on a connection on ovarian cancer. It was for like 22 women and their families who either were suffering from ovarian cancer or who had lost their lives from this.
Lou, I gotta ask you, should we be concerned? Because like you said, we've all used baby powder, Johnson & Johnson baby powder, talcum powder. So should we all be concerned?
You know, I'm not a scientist, but all I can tell you is from a personal standpoint and from a lawyer standpoint, when I know there's evidence out there that juries are being convinced that in fact there's enough scientific evidence that this has caused catastrophic, life-ending injuries to people, how can you not be concerned, right? I mean, you know, I wouldn't say this is mass hysteria, let's all run to the doctor tomorrow, but it's something to really think about. Let me tell you something. I've got 3 little grandsons and a 4th on the way. They don't get Johnson & Johnson's baby powder on their bums.
You know,
it doesn't happen.
My daughter and I discussed this, and she saw me using it recently. She said, "Mom, you know you can't use that because that's going to cause ovarian cancer." So yeah, like it's definitely something you got to think about. And maybe don't rush out to the doctor, but the next time you go, ask about it.
Absolutely.
I would do that too. Okay, this next story has definitely caught a lot of people off guard. Recently in Vogue, Kim Kardashian says she was planning to become a lawyer without going to law school. All jokes aside, Lou, can someone really become a lawyer without going to law school, maybe by just doing an apprenticeship?
If you live in California, Vermont, Washington, and I think New Hampshire, there's 4 states in the country that have the you have the ability to serving an apprenticeship. You've got to work for like 4 years under a licensed attorney for a minimum of I think 18 hours a week. And if you do this for 4 years and then you pass the test, you can technically get licensed. And this was in vogue. I mean, Abraham Lincoln did not go to law school. That was one of the most famous presidents in our entire history, right? And there were a couple other presidents. There was one U.S. Supreme Court judge who did not go to law school. That really changed in the late 1800s, though, and you know the last 150 years, whatever it's been. People generally want to go to law school because there's a lot of advantages. The passing rate is much higher for the bar if you do go to law school. Because if you don't go to law school, you still have to pass the bar. So the passing rate is higher. And although I'm a licensed lawyer in Illinois, I can go to any other state and they will admit me for a particular case. If I'm a licensed lawyer in Illinois who has taken the bar of accredited law school. So there are some limitations. And by the way, if you're going to hire somebody to represent you, right?
Yes.
This person went to law school in an accredited law school and is licensed. This person worked for her grandfather's law firm 18 hours a week, and then she just passed the bar. who do you want to hire?
Right.
I mean, I'd hate to see somebody waste their time to do that, and then they really can't get any clients.
Exactly.
So, but it is. I mean, when I first heard this, I'm like, there's no way. You've got to go to law school, right?
Yeah.
And I started doing the research, and I'm like, wow, you actually don't have to go to law school to be a lawyer. But I don't want to move to California.
Yeah.
I don't even think this show is seen in California.
Not yet. We're putting it in the universe.
Is not on TV. So
yeah,
I'm
no.
staying here.
I think I want everybody who wants to be a lawyer to go to law school. That's the moral of this story.
Absolutely.
All right. Lastly, we talked about Jussie Smollett earlier and his castmates wanting him to be back on the series. Well, now just this week, the brothers accused of attacking Smollett filed a lawsuit against the actor's lawyers. They claimed, the Ossendero brothers, that his lawyers made them out to be the bad guys, alleged that they dealt in steroids and may have even infected that one had a sexual that one had a sexual relationship with the actor. They're suing for defamation and false light. So Lou, what's your take on this? Do they have a case?
If they prove what they say in their complaint, I've read the complaint. If they can prove what they say in the complaint, they definitely will. As a lawyer, I can stand up in court. I can write draft pleadings. I can stand up in front of a jury of 12, and I can say things, and my God, Louis, that's false. You're defaming somebody. You're doing that with the intention of gaining something in your laws. And I can do that. And you have various protections. You have immunities when you're doing something in the course of your litigation.
Okay.
But these statements were made after, the ones that they're suing over, were made after the charges were dropped against Mr. Smollett, against Mr. Smollett, the Ossendero brothers, rather, yes. So they're no longer defendants. They're no longer in a criminal prosecution. And now the lawyers go on TV and they make statements which are, if they're proven to be false, and they're obviously they're not very flattering statements that they're saying about these people. And the lawyers don't get the protection that you typically would get if they were in a courtroom and they made a comment like that. So, it's everything's up. It depends what the proofs are.
But I think the key word is prove, right?
Yep.
It's if they can prove it, and that's kind of a huge hurdle, right?
Well, I mean, it's pretty easy to prove if they got drugs from the guy. I guess if Jussie Smollett is going to testify that we did have a sexual relationship and they did give me steroids or they did do these things, then their lawyers had a basis to believe, it may have been a good faith belief that the statement was in fact true, and maybe it would be defensible. On the other hand, sometimes lawyers say what they want to say to try to take the light away from their client and put the light on someone else to try to get somebody out of the spotlight. This is a guy that wanted to get in the spotlight, and his lawyer said, we got to get you out of the spotlight now, Jussie. So it's a matter of proof, like everything in a courtroom. That comes down to the credibility of the witnesses. And you know what they need? They need a good lawyer.
I think I know one. Lou, thank you so much for being here. Of course, Lou is a managing partner at GWC Injury Attorneys. You can reach Lou at gwclaw.com.